Alright, welcome back. Now in this video, I'm going to go through the UNOS Primary School Science Topical Worksheet Plant Transport System. This video was recorded meant for my students doing the HBL work on the 19th of October 2022 for their corrections. However, if you are watching this at a different time or just using this for revision, go ahead. I will advise you to just pause the video at a question, try it on your own first before you watch the rest. Let's get started. Now this is a very typical kind of question where they give you a plant and they cut off at different parts of the plant and they peel off different layers, and the outer layer is typically the food carrying tube, and the inner ones are the water carrying tubes. So Jane set up an experiment. She removed the water and food carrying tubes from certain parts of the stem. She watered the plant and placed it near an open window where it can receive sunlight. Important condition, this tells you that the leaves are still able to continue making food if they have, now of course the P5 wouldn't have learned this yet, but let me just share the photosynthesis formula with you. Now you need chlorophyll, which is something that plants have, and light in order for a plant to make food. And they need a gas called carbon dioxide, and they need water. Alright, this is a short form for carbon dioxide, a short form for water, and then they give you your food or sugar or glucose plus oxygen gas. Since it's near the window, it definitely would have carbon dioxide. It will have chlorophyll, it's a plant after all, right? And it has light. The only question right now is whether will the leaf receive any water or not. If it receives water, it can continue to make food, and then of course it can survive. If it doesn't receive water, it does not. So look at leaf C. Alright, now leaf C here, it will have water coming. Imagine there are roots below, and water is being absorbed up the roots, the water carrying tubes in the roots to the leaves. So leaf C, can it make food? Yes, it can. Alright, all these cards above have nothing to do with leaf C. It's like that, right? Nothing to do with leaf C. It can just carry on living just fine. How about leaf B? The water carrying tube can still go up past this cut part, because what was cut was a food carrying tube and not the water carrying tube. So leaf B will still receive water. It still has carbon dioxide from the air in the surroundings. It has chlorophyll in the leaf cell. It has light. So leaf B, can it make food? Yes, it can. No problem. How about leaf A? Water, can it go past this? Cannot, because the water carrying tube was removed. If the water carrying tube was removed, that means that water cannot go past this part that was cut. So this leaf A, can it make food? For a while, until all the water inside here is used up, there's no more water, leaf A cannot make food anymore, and leaf A will wither and dry up and die. That's the explanation for this part. Leaf A turned brown, withered, and it also explains why leaf B and C were still green and healthy. So basically I just explained to you the explanation for why leaf A turned brown. Okay, and the explanation is found here. Leaf A turned brown because the water carrying tubes were cut below leaf A, you see? Were cut below leaf A. So what if they were cut? Water cannot reach leaf A, so it will wither and turn brown. Right, water cannot reach leaf A, so it will wither and turn brown. Now this answer may not be the best answer for P6 students, but the thing is my P5 have not learned about photosynthesis, so I cannot require P5 students, at least in my school, to write about photosynthesis and all that in their answer. So basically I just need to indicate that I have the evidence from the diagram, which is water carrying tube was removed. So what? That means water cannot reach leaf A, so it will wither and turn brown. Okay, let's make it more complete, okay? And turn brown as it cannot make food. So I avoid using the word photosynthesis, and I add in the words as it cannot make food. Therefore, it dies. Okay, let's go on to part B. Part B says, what can Jane conclude from the experiment? Now, conclusion is always about the answer to the aim. It's an answer to the aim. Alright, so question is, what is the aim of the experiment? So we must see what was being cut, right? So what was being done to this poor plant here? Well, parts of the stems were being cut, and what was being observed? They observed whether the leaves are alive or not. In other words, the cutting of the parts is meant to show that the leaves need water to make food, and therefore without water it will die. So how do you know whether it has water or not? Well, by removing the water carrying tubes, that will then indicate, oh, if this leaf has no water, it cannot make food. So remember, let's go back to this again. Now, what does conclusion mean? It is an answer to the aim. So what is the aim? The question itself didn't give you the aim in words. Excuse me. But the question itself did say what was being done. She removed the water carrying tubes and food carrying tubes. That was being done. So the conclusion here, let's answer it. So what can she conclude? When water carrying tubes are cut, water cannot reach the leaves. Leaves will die without water, as they can't make food. Okay? So the aim of the experiment is to find out, can leaves continue to make food without water? And the answer is no. So the aim is, will cutting the water carrying tubes stop the leaves from making food? And the conclusion is yes. When cutting water carrying tubes, water cannot reach the leaves, so leaves will die because they cannot make food. Alright, next question now. Ben set up an experiment as shown below. He placed a plant in the beaker filled with 500 ml of purple colored water. He poured a layer of oil on the surface of the water and let it set up in the classroom overnight. This layer of oil is always to prevent water loss through evaporation. Alright, it's always meant to prevent water loss through evaporation. And do take note, there are no roots in this diagram, so don't use roots in your answer. If you ever use roots, it means something is wrong with your answer, okay? So there's white colored flower here. There's a plant, most likely a stem. For those in P5s, if you have gone through this, you will have done your celery stalk experiment, where you put a stalk of celery in some colored water. If you have not done it, your teacher ought to have done it to show it to you. Okay? Now, what did Ben observe? He observed the flowers turning purple the following day. So in other words, the purple colored water must have somehow gotten here. How? Obviously, right? The water carrying tubes would have transported the purple colored water from the beaker up the stem to the leaves. So the water carrying tubes in the stem transported, very important, use the words that you have learned, transported the purple colored water up the stem to the flowers. This is how you would answer this. Very straightforward, direct answer. If you can't answer this, it means that your understanding of the idea of the role of water carrying tubes in a plant is not clear at all. Because this is the simple role of the water carrying tubes, to transport water or any liquids. Next one, let's go to part B. What is the purpose of adding a layer of oil in the setup? As I mentioned before, it's always to prevent water loss through evaporation. So the only water loss that there is must be through the transportation of water up the water carrying tubes in the stem. Let's go to the next question. Danny bought a stalk of white flower. He cut the end of the stalk of flower at an angle. Okay, this is like the original bottom of the stalk. At an angle means he cut it this way. So when after it's cut, it's like that. And that's quite smart, you know. For example, if you place this inside a beaker of water, you see the whole bottom part is flat against the bottom of the beaker. Very hard for water to get in, right? Imagine trying to drink water or drink a drink from your bubble tea and put your straw all the way to the bottom like that. How can you suck up any of the bubble? You can't, right? However, if you cut it at an angle, that's why your straw is cut like that. Think of your straw for two reasons. One is to pierce through the plastic film on top of your bubble tea. Another one is so that, for example, this part now is exposed to the water. And water can then go in here more easily, isn't it? So are your bubbles from the bubble tea. Whereas it's flat like this, it can't. So that's the purpose why it was cut at an angle. Understand this thing in terms of the bubble tea example I just gave you, to understand why this stop was cut. To allow water to enter the water carrying tubes more easily. So based on the diagram, how does cutting the stalk at an angle enable the flower to stay fresh for a longer time? To stay fresh means it must keep having water transported to the flower. So how to get water to the flower easily? Like that? Not easy at all. Like that? Easier. So this exposes, by cutting it this way, right, it exposes more of the water carrying tubes to the water. So what if more of the water carrying tubes are exposed to the water? More water can be taken in through the water carrying tubes. It's like that, right? If your straw is not cut like that, it's harder to drink water because less of the round part of the straw is exposed to the water. But in this case here, it is completely exposed to the water. So that's the idea here. So more water can be taken in, more water can be transported through the water carrying tubes. Next one, Danny dropped some red ink into the vase or vase accidentally. Explain what he would observe the following day. So now remember, this flower is white in color. So what will happen to the white flower? So we are supposed to talk about two things, right? Observe and explain. So don't just say that the flower turned red. You have answered the observe part but not the explain part. So the blue color answer here tells you is the observe part. The white flower turns red. But if your answer stopped here, it means that you failed to explain and you will still not get the full marks, if any at all. So why does it turn red? Always go back again here to the water carrying tubes. And what do? Because the water carrying tubes transport the red colored water up the stem to the white flower. That's why the white flower turned red. Okay? Alright, let's go on to the next question. Henry made 2 cuts on the stem. So after a week, he found that leaf A has died while leaf B remains healthy. Explain why. This question is almost like the first question. Why some leaves withered and some leaves did not wither. So it's just a different way of testing the same concept. So you notice here, died means no water reached A. So the cut nearer to leaf A here must have cut away the water carrying tubes. So what happens? So if water cannot be transported to leaf A, it will wither and die. As it can't make food. Remember, we need water to make food. Alright, so that's how you can answer this question. And there's no need to talk about leaf B because the question only say explain why leaf A died. You didn't need to talk about leaf B. So if you answer talk about leaf B, you did waste some time talking about it. So just focus on leaf A. Last question now. Now, Sam set up the experiment as shown below. He made a cut from the outer ring of the stem. Outer ring is always about the food carrying tubes. That's the outer rings. Inner rings will be the water carrying tubes. As you can see here, the outer ring here will be your food carrying tubes. The inner ones are the water carrying tubes. Sam made a sketch of how the cut section would look like after a few days. He thinks that after a few days, the bottom part becomes swollen and the top part is not swollen. See, observe here, the bottom part was not swollen at first, and he thinks that after a few days, his thing would look like the bottom part becomes swollen. But he was wrong. Alright, if you think the bottom part is swollen, it means that he thinks that the water that is transported up here can't transport further, therefore they all get stuck here. But the problem is, the water carrying tubes were not cut. The food carrying tubes were cut. And food are made in the leaves, so where should the bulging part be? The bulging part should be on top, not below. Because the food made in the leaves, when transported down to P, it can't get through the cut part because the food carrying tubes were removed. So that's how you should answer this. Why is it wrong? Well, first the evidence is the food carrying tubes were cut, not the water carrying tubes. Show that you understand what's the meaning of cutting the outer ring. Right, this will give you 1 mark. And then, so what if the food carrying tubes were cut? So, the bulge or the swollen part should be above the cut outer ring. Should be above, so it should be here. The bulge or swollen part should be above the cut outer ring, as food made in the leaves cannot be transported down past the cut part. Okay, so that's how you answer this question 5. Alright, so that concludes this short lesson. All the best to your revision of plant transport system and water carrying tubes, food carrying tubes and so on. All the best.